Usual, the wonderful Akamarured. But today we have a special guest with Disaster Zone Essia. What's up, Essia?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm doing great. Excited for the podcast.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. So
Okay.
let's get into this. We'll just talk about some news real quick, and then we're gonna go into a little interview about you. We'll talk about you, Essia, and stuff. So
All right.
what's going on in the news, Aka? We have the chest event going on. If you
Yep,
guys,
we got Arisa sleeves and Arisa emblem. Those are the customized the prices you can get from the chest. I think the cameras are not showing. Or is it just me?
There we go. There we go.
As I was saying, we got emblem Arisa emblem, which is interesting because we had a previous emblem before. It was Arisa, and we got the sleeves as well. And there's as usual legendary or gold cards.
Yeah, I find it a little weird that they decided to go with Arisa again rather than somebody like Luna or like Rowan.
They did Luna, Arisa, and Isabel. I think those are the ones that they did already.
Yeah, we did already have a Luna one. It was the Playful Necromancer one, I think it was called. So, other than the chest event, we have DreamHack, which is happening this weekend. Aka, I believe you're going to that, right? You excited?
Yeah. Yeah, hell yeah. We're about to pack. I'm about to pack tomorrow. We leave the Friday. We have a lot of things to deal with. I know France is a very weird and busy place. There's a lot of trains failing. There's a lot of weird situations. Hopefully everything goes okay, and we manage to get into DreamHack and start playing. I'm very excited. I knew today that Kuhala Hana, a player from Rage, a Japanese player, is going to attend as well. He's going to be there. I know that they managed to gather the 3 European champions. Fatina Imari is going to be there. I will be there too. We will be 8 players. We'll be on a single house. So if you want to eliminate the competition, I'll give you the address at the end of the episode, and you can go there and bomb us all away. And hopefully it's going to be fun. Everything is going to go well, and I'm very excited to see the first ever gold ticket going for EU.
Yeah, it's gonna be really cool. I'm excited to see how the metagame ends up being different, if at all, in like more of a land style event.
Yeah, for all of you that don't know, it's gonna start with the day 1 Swiss round, kind of like the World Grand Prix. There'll be 8 rounds if there's enough players for that, Swiss format, and then it cuts into a top 16 of day 2, which is a best of 5 single elimination. So it's going to be a really long day. Just to keep in mind, World Grand Prix was the best of 5 top 8, and it took 10 hours to do that tournament. But they do a lot more breaks, but it's going to take a while. 16 games.
So if you guys have free time and want to watch some nice competitive Shadowverse this weekend at DreamHack, it's going to be streamed. That's going to be a great opportunity for you to get and watch all the Shadowverse to your heart's content. So other than that, I'm sure you guys have been paying attention between the two of you. We've had some spoilers coming on. Some of them have been pretty cool. We've had a blood legendary get spoiled that gives, it's like a 3-mana 3/2. It gives you a blood moon into your hand on Fanfare, I believe, which is pretty interesting. Are there any other cards that came out that interest you guys?
I go first.
The blood legendary was the most interesting for our fans, for the fans of the show. They realized that we talked about it. We wanted to have a follower that had last words at a blood moon or a flower bed to your hand, and we got one half of it. I'm excited to get the second half, but hopefully. But other than that, the forest one, Haddingist Rapture, we didn't have that before. Only Selwyn was the only way to get it, and I'm excited to play around with it. It's a bit of extra reach for Forest, which they didn't have much.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the forest card too. There was also a dragon one. I don't remember if it's gold or legendary, but I believe it's a ward that also deals face damage every time you play an amulet or spell. So basically screams Lindworm support. So I'm interested to see if that card is playable too.
That one I
Could
think
be
is
for
a gold.
Discovery base.
Yeah,
think
one
it's
of
a
the
gold, yeah.
questions. One of the questions that I like to ask, since we have Essia, is, do you think the cards will be enough to change the meta? Do you think new archetypes are going to see play because of it?
You mean any specific card or like all the new
if you
cards?
believe that this mini expansion, because the side games, I guess the idea was to freshen up the meta enough. And do you think this mini expansion, from what you've seen so far, do you think it's going to be fresh enough to push new and different types of decks?
I haven't seen all the new cards yet, but from what I've seen, it feels like it's more like setting up for the next expansion. I don't think there's any card that's really like unique or broken in a way that would like completely change the meta. But again, I haven't seen all of them, so we'll see.
Usually with a small pool of cards, it's hard to like make some really huge shakes, right? Sometimes a deck will find like one or two extra cards that they play, but I can't imagine it would make massive waves.
Yeah, I would say like if they did that last expansion and they added, for example, Miriam to Portal, that would have made a pretty big difference. But right now, yeah, I don't really see it. Maybe the Forest card, the 2-drop seems really good for something like Aggro Forest.
Yeah,
so
this is one of the
possibly.
few 2-mana 1/3s Forest has, I think, right? The only other one I could think of is the 1/3 with Ward, right? It gets Ward if you played 2 other.
There are a few more recent ones. I've seen one very recently about Portal, I think, which is like a dual, like a 5 play point spell, and you get to choose between a Lloyd and what's it called, Victoria? I think that's the one.
That's a very interesting one.
Yeah, looks pretty interesting too.
I find it funny how it summons a Lloyd, and when Orcus got spoiled, people were like, "What am I supposed to do with a Lloyd?" Now we have another card that gives us a Lloyd too.
And funny enough, you can give your Lloyd for 7 play points, make it a 1/7 must be targeted Bane character, because I think it triggers first. First you summon the Lloyd, and then you can buff a character, but I might be wrong on it.
Yes. Yeah, you can buff it. So it's a big ward with Bane.
Hopefully we can, because it'll be fun to. It'll be triggering to deal with a 1/7 ward that heals your character. It's gonna be fun.
It's definitely gonna be. I want to see Lloyd start getting more play. I want to see how, because it's got an interesting effect. How I think Lloyds have to be targeted before everything else, right?
Yes.
So it's a very disruptful effect, and I think that type of effect is good for the game.
But both types. You have to target it as in the target of attacks because it has ward, and your spells must target Lloyd. So it's a complete wall to your opponent.
All right. So let's jump into asking some questions about Essia.
The name's Levi, don't forget.
So, Essia, who are you and what do you do in real life?
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Essia. I play for Team Disaster. I'm from New Caledonia, which you're probably going to Google, but it's a small island in the Pacific. It's a French island, so I'm French, but I'm basically on the other side of the planet. I work at a casino in real life, basically as a, I guess, supervisor, you could say. Mostly, in the card game area, mainly poker, and occasionally I organize tournaments. So basically, when I work, I take care of card games, and then when I'm off work, I still play card games. So you can see a pattern here.
That sounds like a really fun job, actually.
It's quite interesting, yeah.
So, what is...
Other than that, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
What is your favorite class in Shadowverse?
Definitely Forest. I mean, I basically started playing in Darkness Evolved back when Forest was like sort of the wallet class. It was one of the most expensive decks. So I played all the budget decks I could, and then as soon as I could craft like 3 Ancient Herbs, I just started playing Roach, PTP, whatever was available.
Have a slot in my heart, Essia, just from that. I am in the exact same situation, so I know that feeling. And the first time I crafted my 3 errands and my 3 elves, I was happy, man. It was the happiest day of my life in Shadowverse.
When I started playing the game, my friend told me like, "Yo, you like playing green in all of these card games? Just buy 3 of the Forest starter deck and play OTK Roach."
Yep.
So, tell me a story about your time in Shadowverse Open, like a funny story that you've had in some of your games, something that stands out to you.
So I think one of the most enjoyable parts was just last week in the Unlimited tournament. I basically Onion Ship and I worked on a Dark Fist Bat deck, which initially was for fun, and then we both played it a lot, and it turned out to be pretty good. So we decided to bring it. And pretty much we practiced a lot, the classic matchups like Daria, Midsword, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So we went through the tournament, like won most games because we were prepared for them. And then we reached the finals and we had to play a mirror. And I was laughing the entire time because I had no idea what I was doing. Like the matchup is honestly, if you have the cards, if you can craft the deck, I would recommend or if you already have the card, I would recommend playing the mirror with someone else because it's incredibly fun and really complex at the same time.
Mhm.
But like it was the end of the tournament. I got kind of lucky because I went through the winners bracket, so I had some time to rest. But Sheep went through the entire losers bracket, and then he had to play that crazy match. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. Not the best match in terms of performance, but it was really really fun.
It was fun watching it. I was watching on the edge of my
I bet.
seat because it's one of those situations. Imagine you're playing a game and there's both players have a Saphira on hand and you don't know how big she is. It's always like, how many times did they hurt themselves? Did they hurt
Yeah.
themselves or was it their opponent hurting themselves? Because I know you played the flower bed and people were like, was the flower bed from Essia? Was the damage Essia
Yeah, I think
damaging
even
itself?
the
Or was it
casters
she
got confused.
damaging
Yeah.
itself? It was very fun.
For something like
It's
that.
also because you have the
Mhm.
the graveyard, and like for something like Portal for Saphira's damage, you can just check all the artifacts that died. But in Blood, you have to count like the instances of damage from the amulet, and you also have spells like Snarling Chains that do not appear in the graveyard. So
Exactly.
it's pretty intense to play.
Something like that, you really need like a pen and paper to just tally every time. All right, I got hit. No, note it down. Got hit again. Note it down.
Exactly.
Yes, I realized that like halfway through the game.
I think I saw exactly the moment you did. Your expression was
Yeah.
very telling of it.
All right, so if you could make any card in Shadowverse, what would it be?
That's a good exercise. I haven't really talked about like a specific card or like balance issues, but obviously it would be a forest card. I want to say a road reprint, but people are going to hate me. So I don't know. I really like the theme that they have been trying to push about the buff cards. I love Fita as a card. I think the problem right now is that we have a lot of buffs and we don't have enough cards that like benefit from those buffs, like Fita, like the new legendary Vanara. So I don't know, something like a 2-drop 1/2, for example, that duplicates itself every time you buff it, I think would be really cool. I don't know if it would be broken or too weak, but I like the concept.
So if you were to go like turn 1, you play Spring Green Protection, and then turn 2, you play this 2 play point 1/2 at the.
Don't point it out.
Don't spoil the strategy. Don't spoil it.
I don't know what I was talking about. You're right. I think you're right though. I feel like a lot of some of the buff cards that we have are sometimes they're a little awkward too. Like Spring Green Protection with White Vanara doesn't work. It gets the storm, it evolves it, and then you're like, what do I do with this? I can't use it.
Yeah, you're actually better off playing the what's it called, Font of Angel, the new neutral amulet. That one at least works.
Yeah, exactly.
I played that one quite a bit just to have some fun at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I tried it. It's pretty fun, but unfortunately not good enough yet.
The problem I've been pushing feet a lot. A lot. Like unlimited. My cups were the Grand Prix was Fita decks, rotation was Fita decks, and whenever you get the Fita going and the Sibel going, I had monstrous screenshots of like 8 and 12 or 13 health Sibels on the
Oh
board.
yeah.
It was very fun, but that's the thing. If Fita is the only I guess rewarding card for buffing, because everything
Yes.
else is just getting the buff. So.
Then
Yeah, there's another card. It's a free draw buffing, and you get a ping every time you buff it, but it's just really underwhelming, you know.
Yeah, it's
But
also
the idea is
expensive.
there.
Three play
Yeah.
points is very expensive. Contests your Sibels, your Lilacs, which is a follower that benefits a lot as well from being buffed.
Yes.
That's one that I really enjoy because it makes it a threat. Your opponent needs to deal with it, but they can't. It's very hard to deal with Lilac. Once you buff it once or evolve it, it's a very big threat.
We were talking
Yeah,
about how some of the cards get a little lost in translation. That 3-drop you were talking about that does a ping every time it got buffed. I think the first time I read that card, it was supposed to ping the entire enemy board. And when I read that card, I thought, okay, this looks like it's actually going to be a payoff. But then when that card
that would
came
be
out,
playable.
I believe Paula was also one of those cards. I read it as dealing damage to everything as well, like an Angelic Rush. The fiery Paula, but no, it's just one ping. Again, they have a pattern with this.
All right, so Essia, you can buff one card, you can nerf one card, and you can bring any card you want from unlimited into rotation. What do you do?
So buff one, nerf one, and bring one from unlimited. I'd say nerf is probably going to something like Chromatic Duel. Mostly, you know, the enhance that becomes completely free. I really dislike that. I think it should at least cost 1 play point to get your followers. No, I mean buff. I don't really know about buff. But the Corpse Lord buff was actually pretty fun. I think the card is pretty good, but I don't know. Maybe another shadow card. I don't really know about buffs. I don't like the idea of buffs like forcing cards in the game. Bringing to rotation, I'm still going to say Roach.
Looking like a true forest mate.
Hell yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned Chromatic Duel without mentioning the other problematic one play point follower, Essia being one of the players for you. The people that don't know, he drafted 3 Portalcraft decks on the Take-Two week, the finals, and there's one play point card. What do you feel about Acceleration?
Acceleration is obviously busted. I think what really pushes it over the edge is that it stacks with Deus. I think individually both cards are okay. Like they are both very strong, obviously, but they don't break the game. But like when you combine both, it just becomes like you just play a miracle by yourself, and your opponent can't really do anything. So yeah, if I were to nerf Portal instead of Sword, then you know Acceleration is definitely on the chopping block.
Exactly. I think it's a trend on games where your mana system is locked, it's capped. When you can break that cap and play 17 play points or 16 play points on a single turn. We had that problem with Queen of the Dread Sea too. Like the other decks just cannot compete against that. You're playing 17 play points. I'm only playing 6 or 7. I'm capped. You're not. It's very strong.
It's the same.
At least Queen had the downside of being all in. You know, like if you can answer my Queen, I don't have any card left. But Acceleration is like, okay, I'm playing as much as I want, and on top of that, it allows me to cycle all my analyzing artifacts. So I just, you know, keep drawing my deck. I don't empty my hand. So it's pretty insane.
Are you going to be attending any of the Shadowverse tournaments that we're having in the West, like the LAN ones?
The DreamHack, no, I won't be able to be here because I mean I want to let you guys win sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. I mentioned my location. It's just really far for me. So it's not going to be Montreal or Tours. But of course, if I manage to qualify for the Contenders Cup, then you will definitely see me there.
So when you get to the final stage at the World Grand Prix, who are you looking forward to playing against?
Not if, when I get there.
I love the
Okay.
way you phrased it. Yeah.
I like it. It's a bit optimistic, but if I get there, I mean, the first people I would like to meet is Onion Ship, because he was the one to introduce me to the competitive scene. He's a really good friend and teammate. And I mean, I spent more time practicing with him than anyone else, so it would only be right. Yeah.
You definitely want to see your teammate there.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to
Otherwise,
say. He doesn't want to
anyone
say.
from. Sorry, yeah.
He doesn't want to say. We all know because it's a free win, right? You just want that $1 million. Oh, this is the easiest game I had today. You can
I have a pretty good record against him. But yeah, otherwise, anyone from EU representing the region would be cool.
Yeah.
Possibly one of you guys at HSK, that would be nice.
No, I didn't mention this, but I'm really happy to see the old school being represented again in SVO. Essia and Sheepy are players that I always loved playing against. We had a bit of a record. There's a bit of a story as well there because we've been on 2 seasons of NGE. Me and him, we suffered a bit from last season. I know how it affected him. I saw what his comments, and I was feeling the same. The meta was very, very devastating for us. We being Forest fans, we're being very, very, very crushed by all the nonsensical kind of decks, and I'm really glad to see that. Once consistency comes back, I'm really glad to see Cheapy and Essia back at it again.
Absolutely, yeah. It feels pretty good to be back.
So let's take a hypothetical fast forward, all right? World Grand Prix ended, you win the thing. What do you do with your prize?
The 1 million thingy. Buy a bunch of Sears globes, animate all the waifus, all the cards. Nah, I mean, realistically, I would probably just take a few months off, like travel. I love traveling, and then currently I live in a flat, so trade that for a house definitely. Yeah, and then keep playing probably.
So let's get into a new segment we want to try out on the show. We're going to call it The Clash in the Name of Glory.
Clash in the name of glory.
So in this segment, how this is going to work is we're going to have a couple controversial questions, and we're going to have Mr. Essia and Mr. Akamaru are each going to take their own stance on the topic, and they have 2 minutes to talk about their opinion. So we're going to start with the first question. First question is, if you can change one thing about Take-Two in major events, what would it be? And Akamaru, I'm going to let you start, and you have 2 minutes. Go.
All right. Easy question out of the gate. Easy answer out of the gate. Just add a sideboard. Allow me to draft 40 cards or 35 cards, whatever. We have a 30 deck size for Take-Two, and allow me to remove all those Mr. Fool if I don't need them, or Fountain Angels, or all the weird blood cards that I love to draft blood, but sometimes I'm stuck with the weird cards. Also, if you allow me to get that sideboard, allow me to play the same deck throughout the whole tournament. Just let me draft a pool and then just play all my games with it. I believe that is essential to have consistency, to not be forced to redraft and redraft. If we have a sideboard, we don't need to keep redrafting because we are able to build our own deck and essentially make us deck builders rather than just spin and roll the dice.
All right. You have 1 more minute if you want to keep going. Otherwise, you can stop it there.
All right. I talked too fast. I'm sorry. Other than that, I guess I can add more points to it. I believe that Take-Two is very important for big major events. I don't want to crown the World Grand Prix champion of Shadowverse if he doesn't know enough about the game, or doesn't know what to draft or how to build his own Take-Two deck. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Now, Essia, Do you have?
Yes.
Do you believe you have a good counter argument?
Yes, I completely disagree with everything he said. Okay, not everything, but first of all, I think Take-Two is a completely different format from both Rotation and Limited. To me, it doesn't really make sense to mix them. I know in JCG they have like separate circuits. You have Rotation, Unlimited, Take-Two that are separate. I really think they should be separate too. I consider Take-Two to be competitive, but it should not be mixed with the rest. And if it has to be mixed with the rest, at least don't make it very high variance. I think something like a Swiss format would be a lot more interesting. Regarding the idea of sideboard, I like the idea of sideboard. It's pretty cool. But I also think like the main skill in Take-Two is not playing it; it's actually drafting. So I don't like the idea of drafting as like one deck and just sticking with it during the entire tournament, especially if it's a portal deck. And I think we should keep like drafting at least once every match, and maybe keep the idea of sideboard like per match or per round of Swiss. But yeah, force the players to draft and possibly force them to draft like multiple classes. Maybe prevent a player from drafting twice the same class in a row. That would be interesting. Yeah, I think that's about it for me.
All right. Yeah, we did see quite a bit in the actual in the Shadowverse Open. We saw quite a bit of players just triple pick Portal, and the other person not even offered Portal. Stuff like that would happen quite a bit.
Yes.
I definitely agree with the concept of having a sideboard or just extra cards that you can draft. I feel like sometimes a player will be offered like, "Whoops, I got offered 4 Mystic Rings, and that was the best pick I had in this draft." And the other person just gets like bomb after bomb after bomb. And at least if you allow players to take out or have an extra set of cards that they can pick from so that they're not forced to pick all of the Mystic Rings, I think maybe that would be a little bit better for the format. So, what do you guys believe the strongest class is currently in rotation? So, Aka, you led first, so this time Essia is going to start. And go.
Strongest class, that's an easy one. It's always Forest. I mean, right now Forest, I believe, is tier 1. It has been for a while, even if people keep underrating it, I think. One real strength of the class is that it has 2 different archetypes right now. You can play both mid-range / control, and you can play aggro. For those who have played Unlimited, who have struggled against like Rune, and up until turn 5-6, you still don't know if you're playing Daria or D-Shift. That's kind of the same idea. I think the more archetypes you have available, the stronger the class becomes. And I mean, let's be honest, the class has Brambles, which is the best card in the game, so it is the best class in the game. To me, there's no discussion about that. It can beat everything in the game.
So, Aka, what do you think?
I believe that the strongest class in rotation to me feels like Swordcraft. I think that Swordcraft has one of the most flexible ways to play it. You can enact an aggressive game plan out of the gate. You have cards like Hedgehog, cards like Momo or Lancer of the Tempest that allow you to control the trades and build big boards. And also there's the new card that Essie mentioned before, a Chromatic Duel. That to me just speaks flexibility. You have 2 very different game plans with it. You can play the defensive control style with the White Queen Nemera and control the if you go second, or you can play the aggressive style with the Queen Nemera and push even more board control, or you have the black option that protects you against those control decks, and you can enact a mid-range or aggressive plan. Also, you can build it even more controlling. You can go for tech cards like Support Cannon, Barbarossas, and you had this late game engine that just keeps fuel and has a lot of gas. You can play Support Cannon with your Sky Fortresses, and all of a sudden your opponent's board just completely disappeared, and you could start pushing a lot of damage. Arthur, we all know how Arthur and Gawain interaction works, and it can just blow out people. You can go second, all of a sudden, that second downfall just doesn't exist because your Gawain just allow you to cheat a turn, and you essentially play the Arthur before they have the answers to it. Or if you go first with the Gawain, it's even pressuring, and it's very hard. Every time I play against Sword, I'm always fearing an Arthur coming, and I'm always trying to prepare my board to be good enough against Arthur. And that, to me, that mind games you can play with your opponent is very strong and very powerful, forcing them to be on the backhand of always
seconds.
fearing and preparing against Arthur.
All right. So I think here I have to agree with Aka. I think Sword is just, I feel like Sword can just run away with games a lot easier than Forest can sometimes if you're not prepared to deal with it. Though I do think Forest can have like some really powerful Elf Song curves that just like they blow you out of the water. So, and for our last question that we have, of the cards that have been spoiled so far from this mini expansion, what do you guys think is your favorite one? And yeah, you can go first.
Switching. This is a hard theme to discuss in PvP about, but I will have to go with our. Sorry for calling it our blood card concept. I know it wasn't ours, but it just feels special to. Whenever you say, I wish this would happen, and then it happens, it almost makes you feel like either they listen to you or you are having the right mindset. They are thinking like you. And the new blood card, I believe it's called Wolf Prince or Wolf King, if I'm not mistaken. But
I think Walt's Prince of Wolves or something like that.
Yeah, Prince of Wolves.
Blood one.
Yeah, the fact that it has a blood moon attached to it is something that I love. I don't like to fill slots in my deck with cards that are very conditional, not flexible, but cards that are necessary for my game plan. I love the fact that I can still play my blood moon late game with it being relevant. I can evolve my blood moon. It's kind of like Cassiopeia overtook Will of the Forest, right? Because we can evolve it, we can bounce it, we can play. We can play the Prince of Wolves. We can activate Last Word's effect with it. We can use it to attack face. We can evolve it. We can pressure our opponent enough so that he doesn't want to give us a Blood Moon. But unfortunately, I don't think it fits in rotation that well, which is kind of sad because Limited already has the Blood Moon. But I believe that Prince of Wolves is going to bring something to the mix, and activating your Emeraldas or your Dark Generals could be essential for an aggressive game plan, even though it does feel like you're sinking a lot of play points for a single amulet. Also, this makes me hopeful that in the future we might see a flower bed to invest in our Dark Feast bats in rotation, because I've played with that deck a lot in rotation, and I just wish I had flower bed again.
All right. And Essia, I believe you already talked about how you like that Forest card, but let's hear. I'm assuming that's the one you're gonna go for. I want to hear you defend it though. And
yeah, I mean the blood card itself is okay. I think it's quite interesting. The one thing I'm conflicted about is that it relies on Blood Moon, and I was very conflicted about Blood Moon because it allows you to do some cool things, but at the same time it kind of negates the most interesting mechanic of Vengeance. If you play Blood Moon, you're not taking any risk to go into Vengeance. So it kind of cancels the most interesting mechanic of the class, I think. Forest, I mean, I don't know exactly how good the card will be. I forgot the name of the card, but it's 2-drop, 1/3, gives you a Raptor. I mean, the card is just insanely good. It does everything Forest wants to do. It's on curve. It's a really good stat line for a class that has Brambles and Elfsong. It gives you another play on curve immediately after if you want a free drop. It gives you reach. Right now, Mid Forest kind of lacks reach. You kind of don't do anything between like turn 6 and 9, and then suddenly you have Warden on 10. So that can fill a gap too. You can carry Evo points to deal more damage phase too. And of course, you don't decrease hand size if you choose to keep the Raptor. So, obvious synergy with like cards like Cassiopeia. overall, I think the card is just insanely good. And I think that's going to be a free off in most forest forest decks going on forward.
All right. Yeah, I'm really excited for the. I think it's something Falconer. I'm not 100% sure what the name of it is. I'm excited for that card though.
Yeah.
So Twitch chat, this is up to you guys. Who do you believe won this clash in the name of glory? I'll give you guys until the end of the stream to let us know, and we'll discuss that near the end. But in the meantime, we are going to talk about today's card of the week. I guess this week's card of the week.
It makes sense, right? It's called card of the week.
Yeah, I guess so, right? So I don't know if you guys recognize that sound effect, but that sound effect was for a card named Dark Feast Bat. I'm sure a lot of you guys are pretty familiar with this one. So Dark Feast Bat, if you aren't familiar with it, is a Bloodcraft legendary 7 play point 5/5 with fanfare. Deal X damage to an enemy where X equals the number of times your leader was dealt damage during this match. So, right off the bat, I think this is a really fun card. It's just, when you play with it, it just feels cool. Like you drop it on, it's like a Blood Chimera, but it comes down 2 turns faster.
It also rewards you to kill yourself as you kill your opponent. I love that playstyle. Like, Vengeance is my favorite archetype because of what Essia mentioned before. The fact that you have high risk, high reward. Just the fact that I play a Belphegor and I'm like, I don't care, just deal with it. Just kill me or I'm just gonna kill you. This just rewards you for constantly killing yourself and healing yourself. That balance, that threshold, keeping that nice balance in order to not die, and then just boom, just their face. It's very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really happy to win last week with a bad deck because I tend to bring usually out of 3 decks I tend to bring 1 or 2 that are really meta, very solid, and then one that's more an experiment. It doesn't always work. This one worked really well. I think the problem with Dark Fist Bat in rotation, it's really hard to make it work, to make it basically better than Emeralda. But in Unlimited with Flower Bed, it's absolutely bonkers. It's incredibly fun to play. So I absolutely love that card.
When I was playing with this card, I would have so many games where you're just sitting at the edge of your seat, please just don't have 1 damage because I'm gonna die if you have it.
It's a fun theme. You can also do very crazy things. I believe we witnessed this weekend plays like Razor Claw. All of a sudden, Razor Claw is 4 damage. If you have a Jormungand active, which most decks don't run, but that's another full level you can go into your deck. All of a sudden, all of your cards just deal 2 extra damage. It's like you're playing a Mysteria without even realizing that you're playing a Mysteria. Like everything you do is just adding damage. And we built Cockatrice. We built the game, and Dark Feast Bat was a card that I was looking at very early on. The cards weren't even released, and I was playing Dark Feast Bat, and I remember playing against the Zero. This games where I just screenshot my hand. I had 2 Dark Feast Bats, and they were 8 and 9, so I actually know I have the win. In 2 turns, I just win because I just have 20 damage out of my hand. That's a card that's bonkers, and they need to be careful looking forward because we have to bear in mind that Dark Feast Bat is gonna stay in our decks for at least another year. So they really have to be careful when going forward with the expansion. Because like you mentioned, if there's a card like Flower Bed, if we have 2 or 3 cards of that, if we can curve into our Dark Feast Bats, we can just dump our entire hand, play very aggressive, play Wolves or New Wolves or anything else new, and just blow our out of the gate from turn 7 on.
What gets me about Dark Feast Bat is that if you play a Blood-Fed Flower Bed, for 1 play point, you are dealing 8 damage to your opponent. That's insane.
Yes. I saw a screenshot from Sheep from last week where he couldn't draw into his Dark Fist Bat. He drew more than half of his deck and couldn't find the bat. So he was just stacking all that damage, healing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he finally drew the bat when his opponent was at 3 health and the bat dealt 22 damage.
That's a massive bat.
It's like the overkill.
I'm looking forward to, as rotation develops, to see how Dark Feast bat as well, like how that deck, if it ever actually gets there and if it changes and such. So let's talk about the current metagame as far as rotation and unlimited goes.
Weapon at the ready, youngling.
We touched a bit of when we discussed our favorite rotation decks. We didn't mention, so we talked about Sword a bit. We talked about Forest. I guess we can talk about the big elephant in the room, which is Portal Craft. There's some really crazy things you can do. I'll let Essie explain this one a bit more deep, because I know he was successful with Portal. Sheepy as well was successful with Portal, so I'll let him go deep on this one.
Yeah, I had some decent results with it. By no means a Portal expert, but I've seen some pretty crazy games with it. We already touched on it with Deus and Acceleration, but like the class was borderline viable one expansion ago, and now with a few more fixes, with cards like Miriam, it has become really consistent. You can't really do the same game twice in a row, depending on your draw, but you always have something to do. You always have like something to put in your deck and then to tutor. And of course, once you get going with Deus, once you get going with Axel, it's kind of like D-Shift, or you take like 2 or 3 turns in a row and your opponent can't really do anything. I think it's most obvious in the matchup against Sword, where if you get going at all, Sword never recovers the board. So that's one of the main things that keeps Sword in check. And one of the few counters would be Brambles in Forest, because all your stuff has 1 health, so you can't really trade anything. So that can be pretty frustrating. But yeah, Portal is extremely strong, and I think it will only keep getting stronger as people get better at playing it, because it has a pretty high skill cap.
I find myself, like, when I was practicing that deck when I first started playing it, I'd find so many just different alternate things that I could have done that I realized afterwards. There's just the deck gives you so many different options and so many ways for you to make a mistake.
And it punishes you. Punishes you very hard. It's one of the decks that I really love, even though I think Acceleration is very frustrating to play against. But the deck itself is a problem. I think that it's very well balanced. It's very well teched. I think it's very rewarding to play it, to have access to all those options, to enact on them, to just get the perfect resonance every single turn. But it punishes you very hard if you overdraw 1 card, if you spend your tutors on your Deus Ex turn, and you don't want to throw away your Magna Legacies or your Sephiras. It can be very punishing to you. But I really like the theme of playing outside of my hand. PTP is my favorite deck to play because of that. You can Ultra Fate into outs. You can Deus Ex into outs. What do I need next turn? Do I need to keep my hand? Do I need to go and fetch my Magna Legacies or my Sephiras? Or do I need to get my Ward artifacts because my opponent has Storm? And the reason why we don't see Portal in the limited too much is because one of the good strategies to also shut down Portal is combo decks, decks that don't need to go to the board, because one of the ways to counter Acceleration is to just ignore it. Just don't play anything to it. That's why Brumbles is so effective, because regardless of your board state, your opponent's not going to be able to clear it because they cannot run anything into it. That kind of works with giant Chimera decks. You just don't need to play. Just play spells. Don't care about your board state, and just go over the top and finish them with a big Chimera turn.
I think another thing that's like really interesting about the class is that they're one of the few classes, Portal's one of the few classes that can actually deal with a ginger board, like a full-on ginger board, because of something like a Magna Legacy.
Yeah, as much as I dislike the power level of Acceleration, it's incredibly satisfying when you're like really far behind on board. You have only like 6 artifacts dead or something, and you manage to clear a ginger board entirely. That's incredible. That feels really, really good.
And the entire time, as the person playing, you're just racing against the clock. You see that circle getting closer and closer.
Yes.
To you're like, please, I need to click it.
It's also very hard to sequence. If you're not practiced with the deck, you have no idea. If you take a second to think, you're dead. You're not gonna clear the ginger board.
You're not gonna have enough time to click substitution and get that puppet in time.
So if you plan on playing on like a big LAN event, make sure you have a friend and make sure you allow him to play a ginger turn and practice that turn. Because on the high stage, on the big stage, you will not have the time to think about it and everything just becomes slower. You'll become more nervous, lights will be on you, everyone will be looking at you, and you'll be like, I just don't mess up because I'm dead. And speaking of ginger, that's a nice transition into it. What do you have to say about it, Zero?
I don't like that deck. It's like what we were talking about earlier, how some classes can just dump like over 10, 15 play points in a turn. Ginger's just casually like, yo, here's 36 play points. Can you deal with it? You're like, how was I ever supposed to deal with this?
When we mentioned, funny enough, the only other deck that has access to 30 play points is the only one that can deal with it.
You can have an Arthur board and have already landed an uncontested Sky Fortress on the board, right? Your opponent can play Ginger. You can have a second Sky Fortress in your hand. You can look at that board for 30 seconds and say, I lose. It's just, I
think it's really weird because it's also a consequence of the meta. Because, I mean, Ginger already existed before, and it was never a problem because you had ways to deal with it, obviously, Bahamut and that kind of thing. But there is one card that is still in rotation that deals with it very easily and that doesn't see any play, which is Mutabolt. Because Dirt didn't really receive any support, and is I would say it's weaker into most of the meta right now. But I mean, if you play Dirt and you know the Ginger is coming, you just hold on to your Mutabolt and then you laugh. You have a 6 play point spell, potentially 1 play point with Oz, I guess, that deals entirely with like their whole game plan, in a single card. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of factors, but I agree that the card feels really unfair to play against, especially if you play like a slower deck and you don't have a chance to win before turn 9.
Yeah, it's funny that Ginger kind of is like the control deck, if you could call it, of rotation, or this slower tempo deck that explodes on 9. It's kind of like Daria's older sister. And funny enough, the combo deck that exists in Giant Chimera just cannot deal with it. Like, it's so much raw stats on the board. Like, just 2 Israfils. I built this entire Giant Chimera, and I just cannot kill your board. There's always something surviving, and that is very threatening.
I would disagree slightly with this one. I think Giant Chimera can beat Ginger pretty consistently, only because you have access to cards like Fire Embrace. So it's actually possible, and I think if you practice the matchup a bit, it's possible to deal with the board pretty consistently. But that's like one of maybe 2 decks that can do it. And if you're playing anything else, you just look at the board and you're like, okay, I guess I lose.
And part of the thing is two of the cards, or 2 of the decks that we've said that can actually deal with the Ginger board, being Mutable and a bunch of Fiery Embraces, that's in the same class. That's the Ginger deck.
It's time to pull out our Ginger spell decks. Let's go. Mutabolt and Fire Embrace. Let's go. Bring the Ginger.
It's kind of like support cannon is becoming more popular, and one of the very few ways to remove it is also in Sword, because you get to play Vals and you can banish it.
It's happening a lot. Another fun interaction is how like Portalcraft, the class that's good against Portalcraft is also Portalcraft. Like, mirrors are becoming really interesting or really obnoxious. Like, the Ginger mirror is so painfully to play. If you go second, you're just like, please don't Ginger me, and it always happens because it's like turn 9, they drew almost half of their deck, and it's like impossible to deal with it unless you attack the Mutable or the Fiery Embraces. That's
but then you play your grimoire and you lose your spells and you cry.
Exactly. That's demanding too much. That's too many eggs in that basket.
What do you guys think about Haven right now? That's also a pretty popular deck at the moment.
I think Haven is that predator at the beginning of ecosystems. Whenever a meta happens, there's always a deck that's going to be full onto the board, full pushing a lot of tempo, pushing a lot of aggressiveness, and a lot of storm damage out of the Heavenly Knight. But as soon as people refine their decks, that deck just starts falling off a bit in my eyes. And we've seen it happen in our own tournament, our team tournament. Disaster and CPV were playing on it, and since they are very good players, they know practice a lot of the matchups. They were just shutting down Avens. Avens were not being able to.
At the moment,
Yeah, I agree with Aka. It's sorry, I cut you off. Like the most obnoxious thing about Haven right now is the Summit Heavenly Knight interaction. But other than that, I mean, they have some pretty good like tea time turns, hint turns. Like there are some really powerful turns they can do, but most of the time it feels a bit too fair, I would say, and very predictable. Like it's very easy to know what's coming, and for most classes, I think they have a good way to deal with it. As long as you don't get high rolled, you can beat it relatively easily. So I think it's falling off a bit. I entirely agree with Aka.
To me, the deck kind of feels like a one-trick pony. Like they get their turtle on the field, they cudgel you once or twice throughout the game, and then you just have to hope that you're not low enough to die to the Heavenly Knight, or that you have enough wards to get through their scriptures and such.
Yeah, turtle and priest is the only consistent way that I've been winning with and losing to. Is like turtle and the priest is very, very overwhelming, because the problem with end is that since it's predictable, if it's the only threat you have to deal with, you can easily deal with it. But if you're already falling behind from a turtle and a priest, like I like to play forest a lot, and if they force me to use a lot of my removal on the turtle, which is very hard to deal with as forest, or if I am forced to use my lilac on it, and they get a priest on my brambles, it's very obnoxious and very hard to deal with a hand and so on, because they are very healthy for the Cassiopeias, and Aaron doesn't deal well with it too because it has Bane. But other than that, I've been managing to win that matchup unless they high roll the turtles. Like double turtle on 4, trust me, that is my most fearing play to play against. Like even if they don't evolve anything, I'm very afraid, because if a tea time is coming, I am dead. I cannot recover from that.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I think Haven is. It's just kind of in a weird spot right now. I feel like it's definitely a strong deck, but I feel like it does have ways to be preyed upon. So let's move into our last segment for the day. We have a whole bunch of custom cards that people have been submitting to us on our Discord. So I want to get into those.
These are my best work.
So we have here this first card that was picked by Mr. Essia himself. Card called Rosa, Queen of Fallen Petals. Now, the card is on the screen for you guys to see, but for you guys listening, Rosa, Queen of Petals is a Forestcraft legendary. It is a 3-play .22 that half evolves into a 3-play .33, and its effect is Fanfare Choose 1. Your leader gains at the start of your turn, add a fairy to your hand, or at the start of your turn, add 1 to the number of cards played this turn. And the effect is stackable. And then when you evolve it, you repeat the card's effect. So we actually didn't realize this at first when Essia chose the card. This was a card that was co-designed by me and Aka. And it's definitely a little absurd, honestly, when you read it. Being able to just if you play this card and then evolve it, for the rest of your game, you have at the start of your turn you've already cast 2 spells, or you get 2 fairies every turn, which can really bolster your hand size or just give you instant ways to trigger your elf songs and instant ways to trigger things like Amahes and stuff like that.
In my defense, I designed the first half, you designed the evolve effect, and the art. The art style, I like it. The art style, I liked it.
Yeah.
So let's hear from Essia. Why was that one of your favorites?
I mean, it's a forest card. It seems perfectly balanced, so obviously I would pick it. No, it's obviously broken. But the main reason I picked it is because this expansion we obviously had the choose effect mechanic, and we've seen more and more leader effects which I find really cool. Usually they add depth to the game. And it's the first time I see someone suggesting that you get to choose a leader effect between two. And then, of course, you could just Evo and get both. But yeah, the concept is really cool to me. Honestly, even if you made it a 1-1, it might be still busted. But I really like the idea. It's really cool.
So the next card that we have was a card that I chose, made by somebody on our server named Murphy. And this card is called Undead Lunarian. And this card's effect is Necromancy 2. If this follower is used for a burial rite effect or discarded from your hand, put a copy of this follower into play. And it's a 2 play point 1/3. So it reminds me a lot of Luxfang Kit, I believe his name is, right? That's the 2 play point 2/1 in Dragon that when you discard him, he gets summoned immediately. And I personally just love effects that let me cheat small followers into play like that. So this one I saw it and it just stole my heart.
Yeah, reminds me of the theme of card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And I believe Hearthstone had that same effect of when you discard the card, you can add the small followers to the board. Magic has that too, but they also have the theme of cheating mana with followers. So I believe this is a very interesting concept. I'm not sure if it's in the correct class because Forest Scrap, I think, would take this and use it very effectively because it has high health stat. You can cheat a small fall, and then you can follow it up with perhaps an elf song or any buff card that you have. But it's interesting the way it's worded. I'm not sure it would totally work out because Burial Rite erases basically the text of every card and then destroys it. But if you can word it out a bit differently, I think you can make it work.
Yeah, I think we were saying something like if on Fanfare, you got the effect of the next time you trigger a burial rite or discard a card from your hand, summon
it.
Yeah, and it just gives your hero kind of like that leader effect until it's triggered.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. There were a few similar cards in Hearthstone from what I remember, and they were really frustrating to play against for a simple reason. Most of the discard mechanics were random. So the guy discards a random card, and either it's a disaster, they lose their win condition, or they discard that card, and suddenly their board doubles.
Yes.
So I think it's if you can target it like we can do with Burial Rite, it's a lot more interesting and much easier to balance. I like the concept too.
So for this last card, this card was chosen by Aka, and this was made by somebody named Exoskeleton. And this card is called Evil Twin. Evil Twin is a Shadowcraft card for 4 play points. It's an amulet. Its effect is Fanfare, choose an enemy follower, and then count down 1. And then last words, destroy the chosen enemy follower if it's still in play. Summon a copy of it if it isn't. So it's like it kind of reminds you of like a weird tribunal. Like it seems like a tainted tribunal. So I think it's very flavorful to be in Shadowcraft.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's also the art, the evil twin. Once you see the art, I like cards where when you see the art, you realize what it's going to do. Right? It's replacing itself with the original card. So it's either gonna kill it and take its, or it's either gonna kill it, or if it was already dead, it's gonna take its place, and you can. What I like about this card is that it's very interactive. When I play my card games, I like to play against friends, rivals. I like to interact with them to give them options rather than just, I'm going to destroy your card. I'm going to destroy this card. It's like, I'm going to destroy this card the next turn, or you can suicide it and give it to me. And to me, that to me is very fun to have that interactivity. I do my play, now it's your turn. What are you going to do? Will you give me this card? Or will you just allow it to die? I love the flavor of the card, and I think it's a very original concept that we didn't have yet in Shadowverse.
I also like it pays homage to me to the card from Magic, which was also just called Evil Twin. It was a black and blue card. It had a pretty similar effect, if I remember correctly. So I like when cards pay homage to other games. I always appreciate that. So we've been through all of the segments we've had today. I think This was a great episode. I really enjoyed this reboot. I'm glad to have Shadowcast back. For everyone who's interested and everyone who came by, thank you. And we're going to be having Shadowcast now on a bi-weekly schedule. So every other week we're going to be coming back. We're going to be starting at about 5:30. We're going to try to get ourselves on an actual consistent schedule at starting at the right time.
Also, the segments you've seen fleshed out are one of the options we have. We are free to take feedback from you, the ones you like the most, the ones you want to see if you want to implement new segments. We really like this approach of segmenting the podcast. It's more fun to you guys to keep you entertained. Also, thank you very much for Essia for participating in our very first ever revamped Shadowcast. And we're going to take on more.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to take more invitations. So if chat wants to hear from someone, we'll gladly take him on if they're free to do so. And we just want to get to know them. For instance, I didn't know Essia was a big fan of Forest like we are. So now I get to know that he loves Dark East Bad, that he loves Vita. I didn't know these things. And now I know him more as a person, as a player. And it was really fun to get to know that. So.
Yeah, this is one of the first times I think I've ever talked to Essia, and I really enjoyed this. This was a really fun episode. Thank you again, Essia, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
So I want to point out one more thing before we sign off. I don't know if any of you viewers have noticed, Akamaru is wearing a shirt that's got like a lot of stripes on it, and it looks really crazy when he moves around if you look at his portrait. So if any of you guys are watching, just take a look at that screen real quick and just look at his shirt for a second. It is awesome. And for you guys listening, I'm sorry that you can't witness this.
I think that we're missing the Clash. Who won the Clash?
Oh yeah, who did win the
Gets
Clash?
to win the extra cookie. Who won the extra cookie? Put me on for Clash. I'd love to.
Oh yes. HSK against Twitch chat. That's a clash.
We're fighting Twitch chat every day of the week, man.
Like when the TV is working. Exactly. That's a 90s reference. Not everyone knows that TVs used to be like that.
It doesn't seem like anyone in Twitch chat actually chose a definitive winner.
Oh.
So that means it's up to me to choose a definitive winner. Aka, you suck. Essia, congratulations. You are the first winner of the Clash in the Name of Glory. Congratulations. Is there anyone you would like to thank for this? You have any people that you'd like to give a shout out to? Oh.
I mean, obviously, thank you guys for having me and for organizing this. And yeah, I mean, shout out to Team Disaster for always supporting me, turning me into an emote sometimes. I think that's one of you guys. That's Rayas who started that. But yeah, I'm having a blast in Shadowverse right now, and it's mostly because of the community and the teams. So yeah, thanks to all of you.
I want to give a shout out to Holg and Rias for helping us out with all the new graphic design and all the overlays you guys see. If you guys remember, this does look significantly different from what Shadowcast used to look like. So, and I really like the way that it seems to have grown in the past couple weeks. Aka, any shout outs you want to make before we sign off?
No, shout outs to Essia, to Zero, our glorious host, for putting a lot of work. Even though he felt sick for a week, he put a lot of work into the podcast, and we hope to increase it, to grow it, and to make it even more fantastic for all you guys. And big shout out to Twitch chat for making us for staying with us for so long of an hiatus. I want to personally apologize for that, and in the name of HSK, apologize for the big hiatus you took. It doesn't look like it's a lot of work, but it takes a lot of work to put something like this, and we're very appreciative of all your support and for all of you that watched it. Thank you so much.
I have to second that. And with that, we are going to sign off for the day. We will see you all in 2 weeks, and have a good 2 weeks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.